Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to part 2 of our Industry Accelerator webinar series on diversifying the talent search. I'm Andrea Green, Operations Manager with ThinkLA, and also a member of our Diversity, Inclusion, and Gender Committee. We're so happy that you could join us today with this great panel. I have just a few announcements before we begin our discussion. Check out our website at thinkla.org to register for upcoming webinars, events, and great membership information. Our ThinkLA podcast is now up and running. It's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Pocket Casts. Be sure to sign up for our weekly newsletter for lots of great articles and resources. Today, in this second part of our two-part series, we'll be focusing on how companies can diversify the hiring process from recruiting to promotion while still creating and maintaining a culture of inclusion for employees. Here are a few of our other great upcoming webinars as well. On September 3rd, we'll be hosting another great Connections and Cocktail virtual network mixer with host Autumn White, EVP of Digital at Horizon Media. It's going to be such a great way to meet new people or reconnect with industry friends you haven't seen in a while. Our next professional development class will be on September 16th, and it's called How to Negotiate Anything. It's such a great way to sharpen or refresh your negotiation skills. It's going to be a good one. And also join us on September 22nd for She Sweeten Color. It's going to be great. We're going to have an empowering discussion on how women of color in leadership positions are really navigating the marketing and advertising industries with unapologetic passion and grace and understanding how to create space in professional cultures that are lacking in diversity. And on September 29th, as part of our Dig Safe Space series, ThinkLA is going to host a town hall style discussion as well as a virtual screening of the film Suppressed 2020, The Fight to Vote, a short but powerful documentary about the growing threat of voter suppression to our 2020 presidential election. Learn how millions of votes are at stake and why it's so important to vote. We hope to see you or have you be a part of many of these webinars. Now, joining us today for our talk are Lincoln Stevens, co-founder and chairman of the Marcus Graham Project, Dani Allen, Senior Director of Talent Management and HR Operations at Walton, Isaacson, Shari Holly, Director of Operations at Pipeline Mobile, and Reonna Johnson, VP Director of Marketing and Business Development at RPA. So as you listen to these great speakers today, please submit your questions at any time during this session via the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We're going to try to address as many as we can towards the end of the session. So let's get started with our moderator, Lincoln Stevens. Welcome, Lincoln.
Hello, how are you?
Good to have you today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having us on.
Well, absolutely.
Incredibly excited about this conversation that we're going to be having today, and excited to be joined in this conversation about diversifying talent. Excited to be joined by some amazingly talented individuals that most of which that I've had the opportunity to know over the years. And they're going to be leading us all in a conversation that is going to be timely and poignant, offer solutions, but also unafraid to kind of go into some topics that we haven't heard mentioned as much, but are necessary, right? So would love to kick us off. Thanks for the introduction, Andrea. But if everyone could get a chance to know each one of you amazing women a little bit more, would love to know what got you interested in this advertising and media space or in the space of talent. What got you interested and why are you still here is the biggest question.
I will start. This is Dani Allen, for those of you who I've not had the pleasure of meeting before. I kind of lucked into this job. I lucked into my role as an advocate of people, as a talent and culture curator. And it was for my love of talking. I have never met a stranger. I am my grandfather's daughter, and he was exactly that same way. Every person he had a chance to meet, he was just curious naturally about them as individuals. And I sort of possessed that same curiosity and found my way through management consulting, working my way up from a receptionist to a recruiter within the management consulting field. There weren't a lot of people that looked like me, and this was my opportunity to showcase a little Black girl magic in a place that wasn't readily obvious. And I fell in love with the hunt. I fell in love with the storytelling. I fell in love with people's individual goals and curiosities. And I still follow those same mantras and that same verve for the relationship aspect of what we do. So that's why I'm here. It's why I'm still here and why I continue to love what I'm doing.
Awesome. Thanks, Dani.
I'll go next. I can go next. Oh, Brianna, sorry. So my name is Shari, and I actually do not work for an agency. I actually work for a platform called Pipelines. It was founded by Pretty Bird, which is actually a reputable production company here and in the UK. So I come from the entertainment production world, but more particularly, we are building a platform that is going to be a useful go-to tool for companies to really change and reform their hiring practices and their work cultures, and also break down the barrier of entry for underrepresented talent to connect to these industries. So I'm offering a little bit of a different perspective, but just a little background from me. I'm from Detroit, and I did not grow up with any Black women or Black people pursuing their own businesses or going into entertainment. I didn't even know what creative was or that I was a creative until I moved away to Chicago and started working for the Tribune. And that's when my government dream went down the drain. And I was like, I want to do this. Like, this is what I want to do. So D&I is a very personal issue for me, not only because I'm Black, but because I see myself in a lot of the demographics that I serve, because I know the benefits of having mentors and having exposure. So I really come from a personal place in my work because I did not have the exposure or the mentorship or the accessibility growing up. It took me getting a job at the Tribune and someone giving me a chance for me to realize that this is where I belong. So I really pull from a personal place with that. And that's why I'm still here. So I'm 100,000% committed to this on a personal level and a professional level. And I'm always honored to be a part of the conversation and always honored to be a part of the solution and not the problem. So that's why I'm here today.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, I kind of stumbled into agency world because I was in corporate marketing for about 6 years. I used to straighten my hair, and I was a completely different person. When I went to college, I knew I wanted to study art, and I waited for the counselor and was like, I want to study art, and she was like, you need a job after this. So that kind of killed my dream of being an artist. So I went to the minority advertising training program when I was in school. And when I found out what the entry level salary was, I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. So my friend of mine was working at Capitol Records at the time, and she was like, girl, you can answer the phones here and get more money than that. So I was like, okay. So I ended up being a receptionist at Capitol Records. And then when I finally was like, I want to use my marketing degree, is when I switched over to corporate marketing. And so I'm originally from LA, but I lived in New York for a while, and I stumbled upon an advertising agency when I was there, only because it was a new business role, and because I had a corporate background, new business is the most comparable to B2B marketing. And so that's how I ended up in the advertising space. And so I'm still here because I'm committed to being the demonstration to what I didn't see. Just like Shari, I didn't see a lot of women like myself. And I saw a lot of women telling me, girl, you got a good job. Keep answering them phones. And I didn't want to just do that. So I was like, wanted to challenge myself to do more and to lead. And so I always want to be the reflection of, I want girls like me to know I'm here. So if I'm doing it, I'm gonna do it for you. So that's why I'm still here.
Awesome. So, a lot of overlapping themes, definitely a lot of personal passion, a couple of, I stumbled into this. I don't think anything is coincidental necessarily for us to have stumbled through life to now all find ourselves together on this call. Definitely continued hearing about, one thing, you oftentimes they say you can't be what you can't see. But despite not being able to see other people, other women, and other Black women that reflected you in this business, you're here and now and leading. So, you know, when we think about the things that we're seeing, what are your individual outlooks on, you know, sort of the industry? What, you know, all the things that are going on? What are the you know, new tools that people are using? What are the new groups or resources that you see people perhaps going to or starting up that can be effective tools, effective resources, both for individuals that are on the agency or company side that are looking to hire, but also on the talent side of what are some of the places for, if you could talk to the Black women that are looking to see you, where are the places that they could be going to seek support?
I'm going to jump in on this one. I belong to a group that was started by Shannon Washington. I don't know if some of you know her. She is a badass creative, has gone from LA to New York and back again. I think she's in New York now, but she started this group called Toni on Facebook. And it was really to give a voice to those who feel underrepresented, but don't know where to go to look for opportunity. They don't know where to go to ask questions about entry, points of entry. I think Shari speaks about this really poignantly. And I joined that group not only as a way to like, okay, this is a networking opportunity for me to hire people. I wanted them to know, you know, that someone is looking out for them. I think that what I'm seeing in the marketplace, and maybe what we're all starting to see, is Black women today, especially those that are fortunate and have worked our asses off to get to these positions of leadership, are starting our own groups. We're creating our own networking collective, and we are sharing information. We're sharing resources with one another because it's not readily out there for us. Or the agencies, from a broader perspective, the entertainment companies, the tech and mobile companies, they've left it with their HR function to try and figure out diversity and inclusion. I see that a lot. And a lot of times that is unconscious bias training. And that's supposed to solve the problem. And what I'm starting to see is, and it's not just Black women, Black men too, starting these groups, Kenny Thacker and you know, 100 Roses from Concrete, Marcus Graham Project, right? We're creating points of entry for our youth. And I think this is going to be, I don't want to say the wave of the future, but I think it's going to get bigger from here.
And just to echo that, I think, because I personally started a group called Three's a Crowd for that exact reason of, I think for talent for talent perspective, for talent is the idea of owning ourselves and owning our Blackness. And I think what happens is that we have a tendency to look for jobs and try to fit into those jobs versus finding places to support. No, you're good. There's nothing wrong with you, you know. So setting up talent in a way to unapologetically be themselves is, I think, a lot of these platforms are doing. And because I don't think the industry understands what it means to integrate or assimilate into a structure that wasn't designed for you and mine, you definitely need a support system, and you definitely need a space to own yourself before going into these structures. So I feel like a lot of talent is looking for that and need that. And then I also think for the folks who are looking for talent, they need to understand that and provide resources and clarity around people who already work in their structures, that they don't trust you. Black people don't trust these settings and these structures. So the idea of thinking that we're going to come into here and just automatically assimilate into this culture, it's not feasible. And so I think the understanding needs to be that both of those need to exist inside of an infrastructure as well as outside of one.
And I'll just add too, this is like the whole reason pipelines exist. We're really less of another diversity program. I think there are so many great programs, and that's great, but we can all agree that we need some action, and the needle needs to be moving a little faster than it is. So we really wanted to create a tool that's both for companies and for talent, because I did a ton of focus groups, just having really informal conversations with companies across tech and entertainment and creative, so I could better understand what's going on and what are the real challenges, because I personally don't agree with companies saying they can't find this talent. That's just an excuse. And I feel like it's systemic, and a lot of times companies just aren't willing to revamp their practices because it's been working for decades, and the system, why fix something that's not broken type mentality. And we really have to change that, because we cannot look at hiring underrepresented talent as a risk. I see that all the time, and it really makes my blood boil when people say that, like, oh, I don't want to take the risk, but it took a risk on me, because you will never hear anybody, you'll never hear me say that, because I don't feel like hiring Shari is a risk. It's an asset, and I feel that way about so many other Black talent. And so really, how do we change the dialogue, and how do we view hiring underrepresented talent as an asset and not a chance or a risk? So we really need to change that dialogue, number one. And number two, we have to, times are different. Times have changed. And I'm a college graduate, but we really, and I'm an advocate for higher education, but we cannot assume that everybody has access to college. And it's not even a feasible goal for a lot of communities of color. So, if you're pushing the narratives of having a BA to intern, or if you're pushing the narratives of you have to have a 4-year degree to be successful, then that leaves a whole slew of underrepresented talent feeling less than, or feeling that they cannot succeed in these industries if they don't have a piece of paper. And we really have to change that narrative, because we're a skill-based, I know from entertainment, we're very skill-based. People want to work with people they like, that have great attitudes, and that can do the job and excel at the job. But if we're pushing the narrative that you have to go to college and have a master's and have a bachelor's degree, you're disqualifying so many great talented people who could kill it, if they were just given the opportunity. So we wanted to create a tool that would help talent to connect to these industries in a way that doesn't feel intimidating, that they're not just being told to go to sonycareers.com and see what happens, and they can connect in a way that makes sense to them, but also creating an accessible tool for companies to really put their money where their mouth is and commit to really making a long-term impact, instead of just saying that they're about diversity, but really using a tool that's intentional about pipelining diverse talent, and really taking the initiatives to make sure there's intention in their hiring practices. So,
sorry, Lincoln. I'm sorry. Don't kill me. Just to add to that about tools, a tool only works as well as you allow the tool to work, or what you put into the tool. So I think agencies and folks need to stop looking for what can I find to do this, versus let me sit back and figure out what I want. What is it that I'm looking for? How should I be attracting talent? What do we stand for as an agency? Because you got to figure out who you are and what it is you want before a tool will do any good service to you. So I think there's a disconnect when it's looking for Black talent, of like, tell me what I should be doing, versus what is it that I want, and how can I then support and find Black talent that fit with what I'm actually looking for.
I agree with that 100%. And I also want to piggyback on something both of you said. When you're looking at the industry and the market, and we hear there's a war for talent, there's a shortage of talent, to Shari's point and to Reonna's point, it's a misnomer. It's not true.
Right.
Because I can just pull open LinkedIn and find talent if I truly just wanted to simplify it and distill it down to its barest essence. What happens behind the scenes, though, is the top-down approach also has to buy into the fact that it's not us finding that one special person who fits our culture. It's breaking the culture. It's re-engineering that culture. It is changing and reshaping what that culture is, so that those Sharis, those Reonnas that are out there, those Lincolns that are out there, can add value to the culture. They can come in and they can enhance the culture. So I think it's a mind shift. It's a mindset shift that has to go on from the top down before you really even start to bring in those individuals. Because once you get them there, then what? You got to ask the question, now what do we do?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think part of that, and we'd love for y'all to expound on this a little bit. We talked about, like, Reonna, you talked about, it's not just about having the tool, it's about how you utilize it. And it's also about how you support it. as well. And I think as we talk about dismantling sort of a system and building new systems, we've identified that individuals like Shannon, who's dope, she's on our board, created Toni and Kenny and even our organization. I think until this moment, you know, we've created these spaces and by and large agencies, or at least speak for our perspective, agencies and companies have come to us with the expectation that they could come and not do the job that they're paid to do, and then therefore treat us like charity and expect us to just give talent over, right? So can we talk a little bit about where the responsibility lies, how deeper the responsibility lies in recruiters, decision makers, in how they utilize programs or partner with programs, and what the new normal is going to be and what support and partnership looks like. Is the new normal going to be treating this as charity, or is the new normal going to be treating this as a true business imperative from y'all's perspective?
Well, that goes into what Shari was saying about risk versus asset. And so if the perception of bringing in Black talent is I'm taking a risk because somewhere I believe that they are less than or not ready, or I have to groom. I've heard this in my career. I got to groom you up. And I'm like, what is that supposed to mean? So not in my current job, no shade to my new job. I'm just saying that. I know y'all listen. But I'm saying that to say that somewhere there's a lack of value for Black talent. And so because of all these grassroots initiatives, because no one is really owning it in that way, it comes across as I'm doing a favor versus I'm actually getting a real asset for it. You know, if you look at the narrative of when you bring in people who are not Black or just white talent in general, the perception of this person's going to do a great job, or, you know, it's an inherent thing that has to change before I go into my soapbox. But something has to change with how we see talent and how we value it versus it feeling like a charity case or a mandate in a sense.
Yeah. Anyone else want to respond to that?
I do. Also, too, to your point about the organizations, look, there's so many great nonprofit organizations out there, like the Ghetto Film Schools and the, you know, Brick LA, Reach LA, that are fighting the good fight and really putting, you know, really honing in on developing, supporting, and mentoring POC talent and Black talent, but they don't get the mentorship, the support, or the finances that they need to really take that even further. And then furthermore, companies don't even care to seek out these organizations. And we have over 60 nonprofit organizations across LA and New York alone. And I didn't know a third of them before I started working at Pipeline. So, and I'm pretty sure there's many more. But saying that to say that those could be great recruitment tools. These students and talent graduate out of these programs and they enter the workforce, and then they're just in this cloud waiting to see where the opportunity and the mentorship is. And those are great ways that companies could be plugging in and donating and supporting because they need it, you know? So it's really about, for me, the mentorship. For me, I feel like there's not I've been a benefactor of mentorship, and I owe my career to my mentor, but there's not enough Black people or people of color getting to the top and extending their hand down to help others, you know, and a great way to do that would be through these nonprofit organizations. So I would challenge, I guess, as another, you know, tool or opportunity, look for these nonprofit organizations in your industry. There's lots of them in your industry, and support them and donate, do a panel, a guest speaker, like mentor, provide networking opportunities. We need that. And that's just as beneficial as using any other tools such as pipelines and et cetera. And it'll also be a great way to freshen up your pool of talent as well, because they have working alumni who are looking for jobs, but they're just, you know, having the same issues of figuring out where to look, where to go, who to connect with. So I just wanted to put that out there. And then to your point, Lincoln, I definitely think, you know, in the spirit of transparency, Pipeline started off as a 501c3, and I remember having this conversation, and they were like, why are you a nonprofit organization? Like, I feel like with what you're doing, you need investment, money, and power, not charity. And it really, a light bulb went off, and I was like, not to throw shade on other nonprofit organizations, but particularly for what we're doing, they were right. We need to stop viewing diversity and inclusion as a charity situation. Oh, this would be nice if I could just get a tax write-off, or, you know, just donate. No, we need power, we need investment, we need money to really move this thing forward. And that's just just where I've been with the conversations that I've had. We need to really change, like you said, Dani, like it needs to be a mind shift and stop looking at this as a charity or a nice thing to do. This is crucial. It's really crucial. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I think that there are a number of companies, agencies, and brands that have made commitments in investing in Black-led and run and founded organizations and businesses. So I think we should all ensure to just make sure to hold those companies accountable and learn about the timing and learn about the criteria for all those things. We find ourselves in a lot of conversations where the intent to do that, the intent to invest is there, but companies have tended to invest more in their trip to Cannes than or award shows than they have. And I think the beautiful thing about and the poetry about this year of everything being canceled is hopefully the reevaluation of priorities. Hopefully we'll reevaluate our priorities and reevaluate it from a pocketbook perspective, because a certain aspect of this is about economics, right? And so as we talk about economics too, one of the things that I haven't heard as much discussed is, as we talk about dismantling systems, as we talk about systemic racism, there is no conversation about systemic racism without talking about economic equality and economic justice. And so would love to learn and see what you all are seeing and experiencing perhaps in how this moment in time has shifted for the good or for the not so good, the conversation about it. Dani, I know that you work for a very prominent multicultural agency that I used to work for as well. And we'd just love to learn a little bit more about how you think this moment in time has affected the landscape of minority-owned agencies and vendors and so forth.
I think through the illumination of what's been happening systemically, both socially and obviously within our own industries of advertising and entertainment, what has been readily, I've used that word 3 times, let me find another word. What has been more apparent is the fact that minority agencies, multicultural agencies, when we're looking at our general market counterparts, 9 times out of 10, the general market counterparts are being paid, 3 times. Their budgets are 3 times the size of ours. Yet we carry a lot of the work. We carry the bulk of the work. A lot of times our insights are the insights that feed some of the general market work. And a lot of times it is, our creative and things like that are actually being highlighted, but we're working off of, a fraction of the budget. And what you see when Aaron Walton gets involved in these discussions, he's done a couple op-eds on this right now where he's talking about it's time for brands, and it's also time for those agency partners to own up to that and actually pay us what we're worth. And we're demanding it. We have to. I think this goes across, this cuts across many different thresholds, and I think that if we are valuing ourselves and we're not getting the economic parity, then we create our own table. We continue to build in our own right. And those brands that want to work with us, they want to partner with us because they know, one, their insights are true, and they live the values, right? They live the mission. They'll find us. They'll find us. And I do think you're going to see more of that. I think there are more of our people of color that are saying, well, you know what, if I don't have a seat at the table in my moment of leadership, I'm going to create my own table.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think one of the things that you talked about in terms of economically be from a parity perspective, we haven't, a lot of conversations haven't grounded us in some of the things truly systemically that have happened, particularly in the space of equal pay from agencies perspective. The no urban dictate, no Spanish language dictate that existed in the 80s and 90s and persisted until 2012. And for those of you that are unfamiliar, the media companies used to put inside of their RFPs to not buy Black radio or TV, to not buy Spanish language radio or TV. It's estimated that based upon that $200 million a year was lost in revenue because of those practices. And it didn't become until 2013 that the FCC actually made it, put out a memorandum that that would be illegal. And so you still saw after that a little bit of the fallout. So, mention that to talk about how deep and how heavy and how systemic a lot of the challenges that we're facing. And I know that many of you that are working at companies probably find yourselves sitting on a panel or sitting in new committees that are being formed, and that's got to be pretty taxing. And so we'd love to shift the conversation a little bit to, how are you taking care of yourself, and what should we be doing to try to restore our energy? That was my prayer all this morning. Energy restoration, God, please, energy restoration, because I think we can all agree we've spent a lot of time over the last few months fighting and doing the work of a problem that we did not create. So how are you bouncing back? How are each one of you taking care of yourselves? We'd love to learn and share a little bit more about that.
Me personally, I am learning when to say no. Because I can't speak for the others, but that's something that, not that I struggle with, but especially in my own experience with my peers and my colleagues and in my line of work. And because this whole BLM movement is really moving at a very fast pace, I've been hit up quite a few times, for things that are outside of the scope of my job. And you really have to, I think Dani mentioned earlier, you want to obviously be, we want to educate, take opportunities to make sure that you're sharing your own personal experience, but at the same time, mental health in the Black community, which is a whole other conversation, we need to be making that our absolute number one priority. My mental health is my number one priority before my job. Because if my mental health isn't, and often you see it flipped, like people, it's like job, family, mental health is like third or fourth or fifth, but it really needs to be number one. So the very first thing that I do when I wake up is, I'm very spiritual, so I thank God, for everything that I have, operating from a space of gratitude and always keeping gratitude at the forefront. And also learning when to say no. If it's overextending, if I am unable to do it, then just learning how to politely decline or just say no with no buts. So, so that's what I've been doing personally, just operating from a space of gratitude, meditating, and really making sure that mental health is absolute number one before anything and everything, that I'm taking care of my headspace first.
No is a full sentence.
Full sentence.
He said it. I want to piggyback off of that because I, as a people officer, a manager of people, one of the number one questions in this time of COVID and quarantining is, I'm going crazy. I'm in my, my apartment. I'm in my house. My kids are 2 feet away from me. As you guys heard, my husband was doing dishes earlier, and you might be on a conference call. And there seems to be no break or no space between, our day-to-day lives. Everything is sort of collided into one. And so I'm encouraging my staff, and I have to remind myself to build in time for me, to build in time for you, whether it's just to eat a sandwich by yourself on your stoop or to walk around your block 3 times, whatever it is, build it into your calendar every day. That is my time. No one else can take that time because it's necessary. And I think that we are finding people, at their breaking point because of the weight of what's happening socially. You can't even turn on the news. You can't turn the TV on. You can't go to your social media and not hear about what's happening socially. And that, for Black people, we bring that to work, right? Because we bring our whole selves to work. And that is a part of our journey. It's a part of our experience. It's a part of our daily lives. And we're asked to put on a smile and actually perform. And, it is, without having the understanding of the weight of our skin, the weight of our presence, the weight of systemically what has happened, I think companies miss the mark when they're not preparing to respond in kind and give that space and give those breaks, give that flexibility to their employees. It's necessary. We absolutely have to have it.
Well, yes, and yes to everything. I have an altar in my hallway. I burn my sage. I do a whole bunch of stuff. But for me, I have all these conversations to me are Black America in this conversation, they go together for me. And so it's like the idea of being involved in my community is what's been keeping me together. Yeah, and I started probably about a year and a half ago, a community garden in my neighborhood. And whenever something happens, like it has turned into something where we give tomatoes away, we give eggplants away, we give cucumbers away, and it has turned into something where everybody's been sort of protecting it, and people look forward to what we growing, you know, and it just has turned into something that I didn't realize how much it was feeding me. And I only bring that up because the more that I have these conversations, the more I have other conversations in my community that has been feeding me a lot. And almost to the point of, like what you were saying, Dani, about coming in with our full selves to work. And the idea of Black people having these conversations now with white people, it can go from, you can ebb and flow throughout these conversations, where at one point it's kind of like, I've been knowing this for a long time. And then the other part of it is just like, okay, this is a moment to actually do something with it. And then how do I take care of myself within all of that that's happening? So I honestly think what you said about walking around the block, being invested in the community is really, it's feeding me and keeping me sane, to see little girls who want to, you know, cut strawberries together and, you know, do little things together. It feeds me.
Yeah, and I bring that up because it's so incredibly important. We haven't seen what the post-traumatic stress of this time is going to do, and I think that that level of empathy and understanding, recruiters and hiring managers should try to start internalizing a little bit more at this time, to make sure that there's not sort of another layer of microaggression attached to someone's, yeah, I'm showing up to work as my full self, especially when we come back in person. And yeah, I don't feel like smiling today, or I don't feel like talking at happy hour at lunch, but that doesn't mean I'm engaged. I mean, we've had alumni and individuals in our program that have said, hey, you know, they've had someone say, hey, why aren't you, you know, what was wrong today? Do you not want to be here? I mean, are you happy in your position? And it's like, you know, oh, did you not turn on the news? Did you not see all of these types of things? I mean, we come into this world with post-traumatic stress in our blood. Any group of people that have been in a diaspora that has been tormented are born into this world with a weight. And so I think hopefully we're seeing people having a little bit more empathy and understanding what that means into not just the hiring process, but particularly the retention, right? And particularly, you know, individuals that have stacked on responsibilities of parenthood and families and all these types of things. You know, showing up as your full self might mean showing up and being a little bit more reserved to protect your heart space and so forth. So thanks for all the tips that y'all shared on what you're doing. Any resources that you'd like to point out that people can perhaps go to? And we have 5 minutes until Q&A.
Oh, God.
I'm sorry, I should have been a little bit more. I should have been more.
I love that.
Even though that's right on. I have my prayer oil right here, right? So like, what I meant to say, or meant to expand upon, any resources where perhaps hiring managers, recruiters can go to learn a little bit more about a little bit more about how to increase the level of empathy for all different varied types of challenges when it comes to people management.
You know, honestly, there's workbooks, right? You could, I see a lot of these companies doing unconscious bias training or some type of a diversity and inclusion training, and I think it's necessary. But how are we managing or measuring the efficacy of these programs, right? What happens after I've sat in an hour class? So there's workbooks like anti-racism in the workforce. I think Kendi has a workbook specifically geared around that. And it's an ongoing thing, right? You can do a little bit at a time. So it's always a topic of conversation. And I think the follow-up to that is understanding where the people that are currently in your existing workforce, what are they really feeling? Because what you don't want is a LinkedIn debacle, right? Where you're opening up these town halls and you're letting people express themselves, and we're asked to bare our souls as to what's happening in society and how is it affecting you at work and how do you feel about your coworkers. And meanwhile, you've got these other coworkers who are sitting there looking at you going, you're just a victim, you're complaining, right? So you can utilize these resources like the anti-racism workbook, but I also think companies need to really research who's working for them and understand if they're going to change their culture, it starts from within. It's not my job to change your culture. It is, it's actually not my job to provide you the resources. The want has to be there, and then I can help you inform the want and the drive, but I can't change that for you. So they have to do the work. And there's a lot of information out there. I could give you a list of books to go look at. I could give you a list of programs and people who are doing this on a regular basis, coming in and making money coming into these organizations and doing sessions. But at the end of the day, how are you measuring that? How are you measuring the success?
Yeah. And you could give it, but there's also this thing called Google to look.
Yes.
I mean, we seem to find solutions for so many other things, and we come, and I find that companies tend to not be able to find as many when it comes to these, which are often hard and challenging conversations, right? But there's a myriad of things out there. If you're on and you have a question, make sure to drop it in the Q&A. I think we do have one question here. Google and other tech companies have started to forgo college degree requirements. So how do we really get the message across to agencies that a college degree is not an indicator of skill or potential, particularly for underrepresented talent? But I would think that question that is the same for any given person.
Well, that was. Oh, go ahead, Reonna. Go ahead.
I was just gonna. I think agencies again have to get clear about what it is they want, because you can pull out the list of stuff that you say like that you're used to asking for, but until you can get very clear about what you are and how Black talent can benefit your leadership or your organization, then, and not just to say they have a different point of view or they in that way, but until you can get clear about that, then you're going to keep defaulting to the idea of, well, if it's not that, then what is it then? So I think before getting the message out there as to like no college degrees, I think getting very clear internally about how do you want this talent to integrate and how do you want this talent to influence your new culture, your new system that you're putting in place. So.
You took the words right out of my mouth, girl. I was gonna say that's here, that same exact thing. I mean, really, really sit down and take those outdated job responsibilities and really go through line by line, because I bet you half of those don't really reflect what you really, really need for that role. And understand that like personality, to be honest, in the spirit of transparency, has gotten me my last 3 jobs. They didn't even look at my resume because they knew I was hungry, I was passionate, and I would do the job. So we just need to understand too that soft skills and personality are just as important as experience. So just because someone doesn't have the 15,000 years of experience that you're asking for, there's other assets that they can bring to the table. So just piggybacking off what Reonna said, it really needs to be a cultural reset, really, like a mind shift. And you really need to spend the time internally and go through, dust off those job responsibilities that you keep just posting up there, and really go through line by line and figure out, is this really what we're looking for? Because that's the only way you're going to attract genuine talent. Because I can guarantee you, most of them, as soon as they see that you want someone with 25 years experience, and if they don't have it, they're not going to apply. Therefore, you're not going to get that talent. And you just lost out on someone great because they thought they needed 2 decades of experience for this role. So I would just challenge you to do that internally with your teams.
Thank you for that. You guys, was a great answer. Shari, I know we've talked about that question before too, and you definitely said it's definitely about the talent and not about the age. So that all works into that same thing. You know, if you're talented, you know, apply, do what you need to do to get out there. That's the main thing. If you got the talent, you know, it's going to shine through, and it's super important. So you guys are great. I do have another quick question for you all though. You mentioned, Shari, earlier about mentors, talking to people about that. Do you guys, any of you, have any information that you can impart to some of our, you know, participants today about how do we find those mentors? What do we do? What are some of those avenues to help us along this journey? What do we do? Where do we go?
I will say, well, I'll speak to the how do we find mentees first. I know finding mentors, you really want it to be organic, but I'll just reiterate my last point. There are so many emerging talent, dope emerging talent, students, alumni that come out of that pipeline, out of these nonprofit organizations who really are seeking mentorship. But it takes, again, accountability on the company's part to actually do the work to find those organizations and then reach out to them to see how they can plug in, because I can tell you they're there and they would be more than happy to have you spend some time with their graduates and their alumni. And it really does make a difference. I always like to use the mantra, we should be reservoirs and not dams. It should never stop with us. So everything that all the information that I receive, all the mentorship that I receive, it doesn't stop with me. I should always be passing that information along to especially other people who look like me, other women of color, other Black women, passing that knowledge along to them. So just making sure that when no one has arrived. So let's just get that straight. No one has arrived, but once we are in a position to pass along that knowledge or that mentorship, we should be doing that. But to Dani's point, we have to hold ourselves accountable and make sure that we're putting in the work to reach out and hit up, Ghetto Film School or organizations that focus on the agency world or production, et cetera, and then plugging in and asking them, how can I become a mentor? And they will gladly plug you in. So I would love for you, and if you need resources, I have over 60 nonprofit organizations who would love mentors. Feel free to email me and I can connect you, but there are resources out there. We just have to do the work to find them.
That's awesome. Thank you. And I'd just like to add to that ThinkLA also has a mentorship program. So, you can definitely find some information out through us as well. But thank you for that. Did anybody else have any other thing they'd like to add to that?
I'm just saying ditto. Ditto to everything she said. Ditto.
I like it. That's awesome. I did have something else I'd like to ask. We do have some companies that are here today with us as participants. And if there's anything that you would say, this is a tangible thing that you can do today, like 1, 2, 3, these are the 3 things you can do to really help to diversify the talent pool or, in your workplace or what you need to do. Because some people want to know, how do I get started? How do I do this? If you had something that you can say, okay, start here. It doesn't have to be something overwhelming, but this is something that you can do to help at your company. What would you all suggest? Maybe Dani?
I would suggest research. I think you have to research, and I think everyone on the panel has spoken about doing the work and where do getting started. I think fear is a factor for a lot of people. It's overwhelming. There's many layers to this. It's very complex, but you have to research your own company's history. I know that sounds crazy, but look at your diversity slates if you have them at all. Look at your hiring metrics. Look at where your hiring sources. Where are you pulling people from? Because that's one avenue that you can go down and say, you know what, we need to make some shifts here. The other, I think, is also committing to looking at alternative resourcing. Am I looking at HBCUs? Am I looking at programs like Pipelines? Am I looking at, Three's a Crowd? Am I looking at Marcus Graham Project? We need to start investigating those areas. So it's research. That's the first thing you can do. And I think that's the easiest thing to do. It's overwhelming, but if you just start with, well, let's just take a look at our hiring practices over the last 5 to 10 years. And those pictures begin to emerge pretty quickly. So that to me is number one.
Can we start with you? Super important. Thank you for that.
I'll give a little example of, look at it like dating. Look at it like before you go out and you want to get married, you start dating, you got to be clear about who you are. You got to be clear about what you want. You got to go to the places that will meet the people that you're trying to attract. So start investing in these Black communities, versus waiting for a list to show up. So if you're looking for a certain type, or because you're clear about what it is you're looking for, then you're more likely to find that type because of the level of clarity and intention you have around it. So start investing in being in those rooms where it's a predominantly Black audience, being at city council meetings, meeting people, seeing what is going on in these communities, like what's happening. So I would say invest in the communities and don't look at it in a very linear way of I have to only go to talent places to find talent, when I can be in different places within the community to find what I'm actually looking for, because I'm clear about what I'm looking for. So I would use the data analogy.
I actually want to piggyback off of that because I think it's great. When I was first learning recruiting, this is before, I'm going to date myself a little bit, but before the days of like Career Builder and Monster.com, where you just had a phone book and you had to call companies and cold call. It was really about honing in on what made me tick. And what made me tick was meeting people. I had to get out. Where are tech people hanging out? Coffee houses, talking to folks on the subway, going into libraries and putting in a Barnes and Noble and putting my business cards and all the Java books that I could find. I mean, it was really boots on the ground. So I think, to Reonna's point, it is getting into the community and understanding what's making these people tick at talking to people, just talking to people. But that's, and it also correlates with researching. What do I want? Who are we? Who have we been? And where are we trying to go with this? So not just checking a box and hiring a few Black folks and now your work is done. It is, what do we really want to get out of this?
I also quick.
That was great.
Sorry.
I appreciated
really,
that.
Really quickly, I just want to piggyback off of Dani's point and shift the focus, because yes, obviously we're all working to pipeline more POC and Black talent to these industries, but also you need to do the work to figure out, like, once they get there, how are we supporting them? I know that came up a few times, but I just want to reiterate again, once you hire that diverse talent, that Black, producer, or, a Latino intern or whatever, how are you supporting them? Like, specifically, have meetings with your team to figure out what do we need to do to make sure that when they enter our company and they show up every day, that they feel supported, that they feel heard, that they feel included. Because that, I hate to even say D&I or diversity and inclusion, but it's really about the inclusion piece. You can hire all the Black people in the world, but once they get there, if they don't feel supported, and you're not retaining them or making sure you're hearing them or including them in the conversation, then your efforts really don't matter. So inclusion diversity is nothing without the I part. So I would shift my focus to focus more on the inclusion piece, even more so than getting diversity people through the door, like how they're supported once they get there.
Yeah, you hit on a very important topic, that retention part. It's so important. You're so right about that, Shari, because you're in the door, but how do you keep your people? What do you do? So that is an important topic. So thank you for bringing that out to everybody. I appreciate that. Lincoln, did you have any more questions for the rest of our panel?
No more questions. I don't think we'd have time to answer it. But just to kind of recap each section, the things that we talked about, they actually had a song that went to them, to each section. So I'm going to give you the song and maybe you can make a little soundtrack. So the first one about what are some of your reasons why you got in was a few of my favorite things. I like the John Coltrane version. The part where we talked about what are you doing in this moment of time, Strength, Courage, and Wisdom by India Irie. Economic Empowerment and Economic Equality, Let the Dollar Circulate by Billy Paul Williams. And last, Dismantling the System. Let's go with Fight the Power by Public Enemy. And I love what I think Dani said. Public enemy number one, and the power that we should absolutely be fighting is fear. So let's fight the power of fear and move in with the power that we have in love and courage and a sound mind. So that's all.
Oh my God. Yeah, that was pretty dope. This has been such an amazing and honest discussion for employees.
No, I was just gonna say, I just have to say that John Coltrane, that's the best. When he put that is the
yeah. My son falls asleep to it almost every night.
Oh, that is.
He's like, Daddy, can you take a bath and put on Hi, what do you know about this?
Amazing version of that.
The old soul. That's an old soul right there.
I
Yes.
love it. I love it.
Sorry,
This is
I didn't mean
just
to interrupt you, but
that's you know what, that's okay, because this is what we're doing here. This is honest and it's real for everybody, employees, employers, everybody. It is all good. And you know, we're just talking about just having such amazing wisdom today from all of you all talking and just imparting such good information. You know, gratefulness and gratitude and wellness, they are so all key, and persevering for us through all of this, you know, to get to a point where, you know, you said we haven't all made it yet, but we're on our journey, right? Making it, getting to that point. And so persevering through it all to get to that point. My goodness, thank you. Thank you. Guys, this has been so good. I appreciate all of you. I just need to wrap up a little bit with like a little update from some of the stuff that we talked about from our earlier announcement that one of our events, our Connections and Cocktails, it's been canceled for September 16th, but we are still so many other great virtual events that we're offering for you. And to register for those and any of our other upcoming webinars and events, as well as learn some more about ThinkLA's mission to serve the community, check out our website. It's at thinkla.org, and also our diversity, inclusion, and gender page. It's also known as DIG, and you can find a lot of great resources there from things that we've talked about at previous times and today. So that's a great page for us. We're going to be sending out a survey after today, so we really rely on your feedback. So please respond. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you think of this amazing panel, because this panel, somebody said badass. It's a badass panel. I just want to let you know that. It's amazing. So I appreciate that. We're going to send out those a recap with organizations and links and all that kind of stuff. And thank you so much, Lincoln and Dani and Shari and Reonna, and to our ThinkLA staff for all the work and making this event possible. You know, and of course, all our participants, we appreciate you. Thank you, everyone. You guys take care, be safe, gratitude, gratefulness. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
all.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.